personal for Peter.
Okay.
There's Peter, there's a lot of people standing in front of
I've known Stephen Harper a long time, since he was initially made leader of the Alliance Party. He is the opposite of a people person. He is antisocial. I think I do actually I have figured out a way. I don't dislike him, I don't hate him. I hate everything he does, but I keep that separate. And probably the best way to explain Stephen Harper's personality is to tell you a story I heard from friends of mine who were at a funeral for a Canadian senator, a conservative senator, and Harper had appointed him. And in the funeral, in the eulogy, someone asked Stephen Harper to give the speech at the eulogy to say, and he said, well, some people will say that I appointed Fred to the Senate because he was a friend of mine, but that's not true. I have no friends. Now people often wonder, who are the people around him? Who advises him? Nobody. Tom Flanagan was his one close relation that he had in terms of an advisor, a friend, a mentor, and now that they're on the outs, Harper has people who respond to his orders and his instructions. But it was very telling that John Baird quit as Minister of Foreign Affairs and quit Parliament. Monday's his last day as the Member of Parliament for Ottawa West Nepean, so he's leaving well before the election, even as a backbencher. As of Monday night, Baird quit Tuesday morning, but on Monday night, Harper didn't know. And Harper's body language while John Baird was giving his speech, he was hunched down, he was sitting a few seats away from Baird, which is, the normal seats in the House. And he had a briefing book in front of him, and I watched Harper as he turned the pages of the book and kept his head down. He didn't look up to watch John while he spoke. It was a very revealing moment. And so Harper's driven by something, I don't know what, I can't speculate. I certainly think he's deeply unhappy, and that power means a lot to him. And I have good conversations with him from time to time. Randomly. Sometimes I go talk to him, and he looks in the mid-distance when I'm right there. He looks over there while I'm talking, and I think, okay, it's not a good day, clearly. Other times I go talk to him, we actually have a good exchange. So I try all the time to try to, I thanked him. I had to. And I don't know if you know this, but I put forward a private member's bill for a federal strategy on Lyme disease, and it was unanimously passed in the House and the Senate, and it's now law. Now, if Harper had decided to stop me, that wouldn't happen. So I had to thank him for that, right? I had to thank him. So, yeah, if anybody knows anybody with Lyme disease, we're working on the strategy. Ronna Ambrose is Minister of Health. She has to convene the conference so that we get the strategy. So, yeah, I could go on about Stephen Harper. I feel desperately sorry for him. And then, you see, this is why I can be so clear about where he's going after the election. I can wish him well with more time on his hands, a bit of leisure, get to know his children, enjoy life after politics. But he is, without doubt, the very worst possible person to be Prime Minister of Canada. His instincts, his inclinations, and his vision for the country are actually, all of them are dangerous. Okay, well, let's assume for now that we're in the real world and we're going to become a significant influence on the other parties so we can get the climate change agenda dealt with. The first thing is that almost immediately after the fall election is the negotiation at COP21, which is the deadline for a new treaty. Now, for the last number of years, I've been the only opposition member of Parliament to attend the climate negotiations under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. I don't know why, but no Liberals and no New Democrats have come to these negotiations for a long time. So I have a great sense of dismay, having attended the negotiations for so long. First of all, of course, we all know, what maybe we don't all know, Stephen Harper's actions as our Prime Minister have damaged the negotiations globally, have slowed them down, have sabotaged, have created the space for other countries to act badly, where if we were still in a kind of a leadership good guy role, they wouldn't have dared do the things they've done. So right now we have competition for worst party in the room, because Australia is so awful now, with Roberts, with just appalling with Abbott there. So there's there's Canada, Harper and Abbott being the climate bad boys of the world, and there used to be leadership from the European Union, but they've been dragged down by countries within the former Soviet bloc that rely on coal a lot, like Poland and the Czech Republic. So you end up having the EU in sort of a mushy middle. The US is nowhere. They give great speeches, but when you get into negotiation, they're not pushing. So we are actually, since Copenhagen in 2009, the world has been trying to gradually move back to a place where we can negotiate an all-inclusive treaty that does what we need to do to avoid going over 2 degrees Celsius global average temperature increase. To get there from here, we need some country in the room that takes leadership and actually puts every bit of muscle, every shoulder to the wheel to get other countries to agree to do more than they plan to do when they show up there for the negotiations. That's got to be us. We know how to do that. With enough Green MPs, we can work with the other parties and say, look, just let us help you get your ducks in a row for these negotiations, because we know all the issues, we've been paying attention, we know what Canada should accomplish, and basically, I don't care, you can get all the credit, it'd be great. Whether it's a Prime Minister Mulcair or a Prime Minister Trudeau, you can take all the credit, but let Greens show up and let us bring back the people who know how to negotiate. Now, what we have to do is simple. We have to move off fossil fuels as rapidly as possible, everywhere. The good news is, and this is even in today's Globe and Mail, I wrote about it this week in the Hill Times, the Ottawa sort of insider paper. The really amazing news is the price of new solar installations is competitive with coal. This is what's happening around the world. Last year, for the first time ever, investors put more money in renewables than into fossil fuels. This is not dictated by trying to feel good or because they saw a Greenpeace ad. These are people who are dedicated to making money. And they invested more money in renewables than in fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are going to be very quickly over. So that's another reason that Stephen Harper's much lauded economic prowess. Are you kidding me? Putting all our eggs in the bitumen basket? What was that about? It was the dumbest scheme ever. And now we're figuring that out. Now, fortunately, it was never true that our economy depended on oil. The oil sands are, I guess you probably all know this, here's mine. How much of GDP? 2% of GDP. Right? So we've all been told that we had to accept pipelines and tankers and getting rid of our Fisheries Act and getting rid of the Environmental Assessment Act and getting rid of all our navigable waters because Canada's future lies in the 2% of our GDP from killing our children. I don't think that's it. I really don't think that. So the good news is, also last year, I read, it was actually a tweet from Naomi Klein today, first place I read, that in 2014, it's the first year in a very long time, since 2008, it's the first year where greenhouse gases didn't rise. But that means it's the first year when greenhouse gases didn't rise without an economic disaster that drove down greenhouse gases. So this is an indication with more, so we have to move off fossil fuels very sharply. We have to do it, we should be at least 80% below where we were in 1990 by mid-century 2050. That means we've got to shut down coal-fired power plants. Ontario's in the lead on this, but Alberta still gets its electricity from coal. The electricity from the greenhouse gases from Alberta's coal-fired electricity generation is still equal to or slightly bigger than all the greenhouse gases from the oil sands. So we get Alberta to shut down its coal plants, we get Saskatchewan to shut down its coal plants. We stop driving internal combustion engine vehicles. It's going to happen very quickly, particularly if we can get cheap and reliable electricity from solar. We're going to start driving electric vehicles. It's going to be a transition that begins to happen as fast as people left their horse and buggies and jumped into their Model T Fords. It will be driven faster with carbon pricing. It will be driven faster with fee and dividend. It will be driven faster when we get rid of subsidies to fossil fuels. It will be driven faster if the world community agrees in Paris that it's time to reform the trade deals so they don't get in the way of getting off fossil fuels. These are things we can do as Greens around the world. The negotiator for climate for Sweden is Åsa Romson, who's the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden in a coalition, and she's also the Minister for Climate. There are Greens in coalitions around the world, and if we can get to Paris as Greens, either in